Good morning. My name is Margaret Momphard, and today I will be sharing the gospel reading with you for June 24th. Today's reading is from the Gospel of Luke. When the time arrived for Elizabeth to have her child, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown his great mercy toward her, and they rejoiced with her. When they came on the 8th day to circumcise the child, they were going to call him Zechariah after his father. But his mother said in reply, "No, he will be called John." But they answered her, "There is no one among your relatives who has this name." So they made signs, asking his father what he wished him to be called. He asked for a tablet and wrote, "John is his name." And all were amazed. Immediately his mouth was opened, his tongue freed, and he spoke, blessing God. The fear came upon all their neighbors, and all these matters were discussed throughout the hill country of Judea. All who heard these things took them to heart, saying, "What then will this child be?" For surely the hand of the Lord was with him. The child grew and became strong in spirit, and he was in the desert until the day of his manifestation to Israel. When I reflect on this reading, there are three unusual circumstances that occurred, and each carries a significant meaning. The first is Elizabeth, while being advanced in age, gave birth to a son. Many people rejoiced with Elizabeth and Zechariah when John was born. Elizabeth and Zechariah waited a long time to have a child and pretty much had given up hope that they would ever be parents. When I reflect on this, I am reminded that God is present and always with us. When we are impatient, when things don't go as we planned, when times are challenging, when times are good and when times are bad, God is with us and his timing is always perfect. The second unusual circumstance is that Elizabeth said his name would be John. Back in the time, it was very customary for people to name their children after the father, or at the very least a grandfather. When Elizabeth said that his name would be John, many questioned that because John was not a family name for them. Because this was against the norm, they asked Zechariah what he wanted the child to be named. Now, this is very unusual because, as we know, Zechariah was struck deaf and mute when he challenged the belief or the fact that they would be having a child. In reflecting on the fact that Zechariah wrote on the tablet John, and that he and Elizabeth really didn't have a way to communicate what the child's name would be, it's very unlikely that Elizabeth would have been able to read back in those days. It is clear that God had spoken to both Elizabeth and to Zechariah, and they both listened to God. They heard the name, and they chose to listen to God. Listening to God sometimes means that we are going against the norm of society or against popular opinion. And as we know, God's desire isn't always popular, but we do need to listen to what he is telling us each in our heart. And then the third thing that strikes me in the reading is that, Zechariah had been struck deaf and mute because of his lack of faith. And then reflecting on this reminds us that God is merciful, because when Zechariah said that the name would be John, it was very clear that he heard and he listened to God. And it's also clear that God forgives our sins and fulfills his promises to us in his time. We need to have faith and put our trust in God. In these challenging and uncertain times, these messages ring loud and clear. God's timing is always perfect. Listen to God, and he will not lead us astray. God is merciful, and he forgives. Have a great day.